Good evening, everyone. You can hear us fine?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Welcome to the third lecture in the series on information technology services in the knowledge economy. In the first two lectures, we talked about the differences which we have between what happened at the time of the Industrial Revolution, the similarities and dissimilarities which are there between the revolution at that time and the revolution that we are currently witnessing, and why we think that this current revolution, the information technology revolution or the knowledge society revolution, is much more profound, much swifter, and will have much longer effect than what happened previously ever in history. This is changing the life for each and every one of us in different ways. It is making the world a much smaller workplace. The regional boundaries, the provincial boundaries, the state boundaries, and the national boundaries are slowly losing any significance. And a lot of this difference has happened because of the way the telecommunications technology has advanced, the internet technology has advanced. Without that, it would have been inconceivable to have the kinds of profound changes that we are seeing today. And the big companies have played a very major role in this change, and Verizon is definitely one of them. So in this course, we are looking at the technical issues, the business issues, the policy issues which go with it. And we try to have an interactive session where we encourage you to ask questions, and based on the questions that you ask, the speaker reorients the direction of the talk accordingly. So it's not a static talk, it's much more of a dynamic talk. And for those who are here, you have the opportunity to ask questions at the end. For those who are viewing this from a distance, you have the technology now available on your computers to be able to ask questions, and at the end, somebody will ask the question on behalf of you in this session here. I should also mention that we are very honored that Mr. Seidenberg, who has graciously agreed to be the guest speaker for the day, he has had a number of wonderful connections. One of it is he changed Verizon, and I will let him talk about the differences that he made to the whole scene. But more importantly, from a PACE point of view, he is the major benefactor for the school that I hold the privilege of being the dean at this point, the Seidenberg School of Computer Science and Information System. It's a very unique school. When it was set up, it was the first one in the area which focused exclusively on the area of computer science and information systems. And even today, it is a leader in a number of areas. And furthermore, we have, thanks to his generosity, a program called the Seidenberg Scholars Program, where we receive students who are gifted, who can make a contribution in life. And we have recently decided to expand that program a lot, also to encourage graduate students to join it. So we are really thankful to him for all the help and support that he's provided to the university and to my school. Thank you very much. Mr. Ivan Seidenberg has a very unique background. He really started at the bottom of the telecommunications industry and worked his way to the top. And it's the kind of person I admire most in life, who has really seen life at all the different rungs of society, from the very bottom to the very top. He grew up in the blue-collar Gun Hill section of Bronx, New York. Having failed out of college during his first matriculation, he found few doors open to him. He took a job with New York Telephone, climbing into manholes and splicing cable. The country was at war. He joined the US Army, came back, and he attended night school for 14 consecutive years. Imagine doing that with a full-time job and working in the evenings after such a hectic schedule. That's what he did. He earned an undergraduate degree and an MBA. As we were talking earlier this evening, he told me that at the time when he had to make the decision, he had the choice of going to New York University and Pace University. And he made the right choice. He joined Pace University, primarily because the kind of education that we impart here is much more practical, much more hands-on, and that's the tradition that we have continued on to today. As I said, I'm really honored and privileged, A, to be the Dean of the Seidenberg School, B, to hold the endowed chair that has been so generously gifted by him and his family, and third, to welcome him as the distinguished speaker for the class today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so good evening. Hello. Hello. You can do better than that. Good evening. All right, there you go. So you now know a lot about me, but I don't really know anything about all of you. So how many students here? All right. what schools, what majors? Computer engineering? Computer? Finance. Okay. We'll talk about finance. What else? Very good. Okay. Graduate students? Okay. And my favorite question, who's from the Bronx? You could come right up here. Okay. No, okay. Where?
134 Vice.
Perfect. Okay. Very good. All right. Well, listen. This is an honor for me to be here. It really is. It's a lot of fun. As you can tell by the chart, I'm retired. So that's a good thing, by the way, when you get the chance to retire. So this is a story about the company that I worked for 46 years. Before you were born. 46 years. But it's also a story about how technology changes the world. But it could also be a story about how you build your careers for the next 30 years. So there are some lessons in here that I think are interesting for all of you to just pay attention to. Sure, it'll be a little bit about what our company has done, but I think the lessons apply to almost all the things that you're facing in your young lives and the things you want to do. We have faculty here? You should really pay attention. All right, very good. Okay, so let's get started here. So, okay, let's go. So when I joined the telephone company in 1966, the center of the universe was the black telephone. Anybody remember what that is? Okay. Most households had one. There were probably 60 or 70 million of them in the whole United States. Less than 10% of the people had a second line. No one had a fax line. No one had an answering machine. So that was the center of the universe. And we built a business around that, a good business. And you could see over on your right, what you would see over there is that we were a landline phone company. You could read all of those different things, but we were a utility. We had a structured business. We had costs. We had union representation. We were focused on making sure your phones worked. And that was our business model. And we did pretty well. We would charge $10, $12 a month, probably make $1.50 on that $10, $12, invest some of that back in the business for new technology, and that was the business model. Pretty interesting, right? Then certain things started to happen. Technology started to change the things that we always did in that black telephone. And I'm sure all of you do all these things, so you know them better than I do. But over the course of 15 to 20 years, from 1960 to 1980, the world went from analog to digital. It went from static to interactive. We had simple data to big data. You can see all that. So all the things that you're used to today that are just second nature completely disrupted our lives. So just think about it. The Bell system in those days had 1 million employees. They probably had 5 million suppliers that provided goods and services to us to provide the services with that black telephone. And so just think of the disruption that goes on in everybody's lives, everybody's home, when you now have to start thinking about the world that's changing. And no one did anything wrong. It's just that technology changed the world. We also had a business to run, and so for those of you finance majors in the room, what we had is a structure in which we were a regulated utility. And you could see all the things that go with that. We were a monopoly. Some people love monopolies, other people hate them. You know, finance people love monopolies because one person, steady stream of revenues, no competition. The public generally doesn't like monopolies because they think that for the most part, when you're a monopoly, you're not innovating. But you could see what the pressures that were on the company were to go from this monopoly utility orientation to one that was much more based on the forces of the market. So think of PACE in 1966. Only a few universities here, very little intramodal competition between and among universities. So think of the stability of the business model, and now think about whether it's PACE or the City of New York or any big institution, all these technical forces have changed almost every institution in the country in ways that changed our own company. So we had no growth. So the thing is, what used to be steady income now became subject to all these forces, and we had no way of sustaining the business that we had always run. And here I was a lineman running around and fixing people's phones and learning about all these things, trying to tell all those folks who were running the place that life is different. You know, that's the way it kind of works. Now, just to put a little a bit of numbers behind this, most of you, this is instinctive, but just in the last 5 years alone, we're up to 2.3 billion internet customers, and I think somebody estimates that number increases by something like 1.5 million a day. It's kind of like an incredible number, and it could even be more. But the issue at this point, almost everybody on the planet, someplace, has access to the internet. If you look at the traffic, meaning all of the voice minutes and the data traffic that rides over the internet, that's increased by almost 8-fold just in the last 5 years. And there are estimates of that doubles and triples almost every other year. It's incredible, isn't it? So when you think about all of the texting you do and all of the data traffic you send and all of the YouTubes you do and Facebook postings and everything you do, when you add it all up, it's like 8 times growth over that period of time. And what's interesting about it to a business person, it's great growth, but the cost of doing it because of the technology keeps coming down. So it's hard to make a lot of money on that and support the business. But it's great. It's a great phenomenon that occurs. If you look at wireless, that's another whole story. So from a standing start in 1984, I think today, by the way, okay, I have a trivia question for you. I almost gave you the answer. So today is the 40th anniversary of what? The mobile phone. Very good. Can you believe that? Today is the 40th anniversary of the mobile phone. So from a standing start 40 years ago, 78% of the people on the planet Earth have a cell phone in 40 years. Do you think 78% of the people use a toothbrush? Could you think of anything in which 78% of the people use? Water. They probably all drink water. But think about it. Cell phones are more popular than toothbrushes. Did you know that? Did you know that? How are you? Great to see you. Okay. All right. Okay, so what were our challenges? So here I was now moving through the business, working with all my colleagues, and we were facing this challenge, which was not unique to our company. It was unique to almost every big institution. And this is where you sort of blend the organic or your internal drive to want to build something against the financial issue of, do you sell yourself? Do you dress yourself up for sale? What do you do? So, like everybody, we had a decision to make. Are we going to just try to milk it, or are we going to build it? Now, everybody says that. Every company says they're going to build. But if you watch their feet, not every company does it. So the difference in this story is, as you go through this, and this is something you all will do in your careers, you want to keep moving around and riding the wave, or you want to stop and make a difference someplace. And there's different journeys for everybody, but these are important points. In order to build something, and you're allowed to move around too, that's a good thing, but to build something, you got to know something. You got to stop and learn enough to make a difference. So let's talk about what that is. So the things we needed to do, we needed to get bigger, because we were the phone company, which was kind of okay, but everybody was taking away our business, so we had to figure out a way to be more than the phone company. So we had to expand our markets. We had to get bigger because we needed to generate enough revenue to reinvest some of that money back in the things we thought we could build. We needed to pick the technologies that we thought made a difference. Couldn't straddle the fence and do a little bit of everything. We had to pick 2 or 3 things and do them as well as we could figure out. And we had to invent the way we do stuff every day. So, because you know this, you can, wherever it is you do, whether you go into the cafeteria, whether you sign up for your classes, you're kind of saying, how did this end up this way? Why is it this way? How come we didn't invent it a different way? And by the way, it's in everything you do. I'm sure when you get on our website, somebody will say, how did Verizon end up in this place? But here's what happens. These things get built over time. What these new technologies let us do is do a reset. It's change the process and give ourselves a chance to be more contemporary and, in effect, become a lot more relevant to the way you think technology ought to be used in your everyday lives. And then, of course, we had to make sure that the customer felt that they were part of this process. So it's an obvious setup list, but you do all these things in parallel. They're not things you do one at a time. Okay, so what do we do? So this is the Verizon story on one chart. So this is my whole life in one chart. Okay. So over the past 20 years, we probably bought and sold close to $200 billion worth of companies. Over 100 acquisitions. What did we do? We invested in 3 core technologies. I'll cover this a little bit on the next charts. But we decided to build bigger and faster pipes. Bigger and faster wireless devices. So you can go from skinny little data lines to high-speed access. To you, this is all, you take this for granted. It's supposed to be there. But it wasn't always there. These are things you had to invest in. We invested in the global IP, meaning we are the second or third largest backbone internet company in the world. We think that's important because as traffic multiplies by 8-fold over a 5-year period, somebody's got to carry that traffic and deliver it to all the communities. We have to reinvent our core systems. I'll talk a little bit about this. We have to figure out how to innovate with partnerships. And when you think about that, Google does that well. The Silicon Valley companies tend to do that well. Then we had to focus on our service, our brand, and our culture so people remember who we are. And that they want to sign up for our service because they like our name and what we stand for. So these are the things that we did. Now every company will say they do this. Every state government, every city government, everybody will say they do all this. But you, the public, know who doesn't do it because you can see it in the results. So this is the prescription, but now you got to do the work. So, just real quick. So this is sort of we get a chance to brag chart. So this is just some of the companies. Now, for those of you who are older than 22, you will know some of these companies. For those of you who aren't, you won't even know who they are. But Verizon is an amalgam of, think about it, MCI, Hughes, Bell Atlantic, 9X, GTE, and some of these companies. We bought over 125 companies. All right, so we got bigger, we cover more geography, we acquire more customers, so we have a bigger footprint. It's not that hard, right? We invested in technology. So we decided that we were going to do things that we were good at. And what are we good at? We think we are, the way we would look at it, we run networks. So we're not AOL, we're not Google, we're not Facebook. We don't do the platforms that sit on top of the network. We run the network. So we can get any information from point A to point B. So kind of an analogy to that is if you think of Federal Express, they're a big network. They can get any package that you want from any place here to any place in the world. They can do it in 1 day, in 3 days. They can do it in a lot of, they have FedEx Purple, FedEx Green, you probably have seen that. They are a big distribution company. So we viewed ourselves as an important electronic distribution business. So how do we get your fax or your package or your charts or your papers any place on the planet and do it efficiently, high security, high quality, on time? That's kind of simple. And by the way, it took probably 15 years for us to get comfortable with defining ourselves that simply. Because there's always something about oversimplifying what you do that you feel you're missing something. Okay? So, again, for you students, don't feel bad. Like if you become an expert in something, I guarantee that if you're really an expert at it, there aren't that many other people who probably know as much as you do. So it's really not a bad thing. So these are the things we invested in. And then, of course, and now the latest thing is cloud services. So what's cloud services? Well, to somebody like me, it's having big data centers, the cloud. But there's no cloud. The cloud is a data center sitting somewhere in a piece of geography in North Carolina or in upstate New York that handles petabytes of data and is able to process almost any piece of information that's available to do that. So we have a global network of data centers. It's probably around 4,000 data centers. And every once in a while we figure out we should be 3,000 and make them bigger. And then somebody has a fire and we say, no, that's not good. We should go up again to 4,000. But we're trying to figure out what that architecture looks like. But the way we think about it is we're interested in making sure we have a cloud presence in every global city. So we don't look at, it's interesting, we in the phone business, communications business, we don't look at the world through standard geography. We look at the world through the 150 largest urban centers. It's very interesting. So people like me, when we listen to what's going on in the state government or federal government, it's like another planet because we don't even see the world that way. We don't even see America that way. We see America as all these cities, and the urbanization of these cities is creating a completely different consumer model. And we're deploying our capital, we're teaching our people how to deal in those environments. And these are things that, as you go forward in your careers, there's so much opportunity to sort of help America retool itself to think about how to serve people where they live, what they want, when they want it, and help every company figure this out. So this is what we've done. Now, how much did we spend doing this? So we averaged $15 to $20 billion a year over the last 20 years investing capital in these technologies. So for you math majors, 20 times 20 is $400 billion, right? Is that about right? Okay, so give or take a little bit. So while we were buying $200 billion worth of companies, we were reinvesting organically close to $400 billion worth of capital to build out our technology. Okay? Got the picture? Big money, right? A lot of stuff. Okay. So the other thing we did, so now that we sort of focus on the infrastructure of our company, now we had to focus on the customer side and the people side. So this chart, real quick. So what are the platforms that we offer the services? So you buy a pipe from us, now we offer you a series of communication services or video services. We call that a platform. If you buy a wireless service, we give you a platform. Family plan, you'll buy a data service, you'll buy 4G access, all the things that you care about. So we do that. And then the other thing that we had to learn, which I think is really a wonderful component of the whole IT world, is that the whole world spent 15, 20 years using computers to mechanize and automate manual work. And that was okay. But now we're figuring out what we need to do is not just automate it, but redesign it. So think of like Amazon. Amazon never existed, and when you interface with Amazon, it's a completely different experience. If you read the New York Times or the Daily News on the internet, all they did is automate the print. There's no difference in the experiment or the experience. You just look at the computer screen, and the Daily News, all they did is take pictures of the pages. So that's not a proper use of the technology, but it's another place. Those of you who like the newspaper business, get a job at the Daily News, and you can fix their website. You can do that. Right. Okay, so this is all about processes and platforms. And by the way, this is the people side of the business. This is what you learn in college. This is what you learn. All about process and people, standards, platforms, and how to make the technology work the way customers expect it to work. Okay, let's keep going. We're almost done. Okay, so where are we now 20 years later? And I guess you know us, but I guess that we could say this. So I'm retired now, so I could say this and compliment the folks who are still there. But for the last 3 out of 4 years, you take the phone company in New York, and any business that runs in New York gets beat up every day. You know that, don't you, right? I mean, it's just sport to kill the local companies, right? And that's just what you do in New York. If the same company that operates in Denver, they put you in the Hall of Fame every day. They love you. In New York, they want to kill you. But Verizon, 3 of the last 4 years, Fortune's most admired, and you could see all the things. Working mother. So all the aspects of making sure we're a good place to work, we give people good careers, we provide good service, becomes the most important thing you do on top of the money you spend for your technology and all the companies you buy. So yeah, we kept a lot of lawyers busy and a lot of finance people busy. We kept a lot of engineers busy designing that, and that's all important to us. But when it's all said and done, if the public doesn't know what you did because of the things listed on this chart, you haven't scored. So right now, we feel we're pretty good. So the team running the place is doing a good job, and certainly you know us in wireless. You know us because You can get high-speed access. I guess you have high-speed access all over the campus, correct? Almost all over the campus? Some places all over the campus? Okay, there you go. All right. We're working on it. Okay. All right. So this is what we look like. So if you go back just 6 years ago, you can see on that top pie that about half of our revenues, 52% of it, came from services that had always been there. A derivative of the plain old black telephone, the plain old phone call. You know, picking up your phone call. Today, as we speak, about 30% of our total revenues are from the old stuff, and now our revenue streams are built around all the new stuff. And even in wireless today, what used to be new, like wireless texting, is also being attacked by new technologies that allow you to send all your messages by data. So we're now having to reinvent the way we do that. But think about this. Our company, 60 to 65% of the people who work at Verizon were hired in the last 6 years. You would never believe that. The average age of our wireless company is 34. Would you have guessed that? You would have thought we were all like me. Average age, right? Average age 75, right? Exactly. But no, see, what's very interesting is that if we do our job in management to build the systems, the process, and the culture, we can plug people into the system, and within a few years, you would think they're there forever. Really important. So there's hope. There's lots of jobs out there. There's lots of opportunity. And we're not the only company like this. I mean, if you look at Google, same thing. Their average age has got to be in the low 30s. If you look at Apple, same thing. And I know in talking to them, when they look at us and see our wireless business, they are surprised that our profiles are the same as theirs. And IBM's getting younger, General Electric's getting younger, and this is all good, because I think it means all these companies are feeling the need to create contemporary processes to take advantage of the knowledge that you all will be developing and creating and managing your business. We provide the adult supervision, so to speak, but once you get plugged into the system, you have a chance to sort of move the boundaries around a little bit. You like that? You need adult supervision. You come from the Bronx. I know you need adult supervision. Okay? Is this true?
Sound like my wife.
It's true. Okay. Okay. So what are the lessons? So you got to invest, whether we invest in our company or you invest in yourself, you got to invest. You got to keep transforming your company. You got to keep transforming yourselves. You got to partner with people, because you can't invent everything on your own. You got to collaborate, and we've learned that. You know, you got to build a brand. Companies build brands. You build brands. You're a brand. Every one of you is a brand. You know how you work, how you do your work, what your standards are, and people notice that instantly. They pick that up in a nanosecond. And then you got to focus on not yourself, but focus on those who you're trying to serve. Okay? We good? All right, I'm done. So you can. So that's our story. So the most important part now is to get some questions, get some feedback. What are you interested in?
Right. Okay, I'll get it to you. Put some forward, it might be better, whoever wants to ask questions. We'll have you on the camera that way, if it comes. Then.
That's the question to whom? To them?
No, you just ask it, standing here.
So we can get you out.
We have a lot of police. See, we have a lot of police here now. See,
So if you come here,
Right.
It's a two-part question. It's a two-part question. The first part is, what is the skill or the set of skills that allow you to progress in your career, and what do you look for when you hire, or what did you look for when you hired throughout your management career?
Yeah. Okay. So what are the skills? Okay. So let's deal with that. What I found in my career is that whatever job you're given, there's a set of principles and a set of data that you have to constantly question, because you can end up in a situation in which you think facts are facts when they're really mythology. So I think one of the things that I learned right away is that you have to question and you're constantly learning. So to me, this whole issue of continuous learning, I think is really important. And I think that's always served me well. So I always ask a lot of questions. I always viewed that it was my job to be prepared. So preparation and continuous learning, I think, are the two things that... In my education, I have a PACE education, so that's got to be good, right? I went to New York City public school. Can't be bad doing that, right? Passed the Regents, right? That's not a high standard, but I passed the Regents. You didn't get to that. But here's what I found. You know, to be honest about it, the thing that's interesting is that in a company like ours, you get everything. You get the MIT grad, and then you get the grad from Lehigh, and then you get the Bronx Community College kid. And you know what's interesting is that they all start out from a different place, but time takes care of that. If you do your work, you learn, you're adaptable, you'd be surprised that you can close those gaps a lot quicker than you think. And this is a comment. And it doesn't mean that any of these places are bad. You need people from all these different institutions. But the deck is not stacked against you. Now, I think the other part of the question is, what do I look for? So I think that's a good question. And that's easy. And I used to tell our employees this. So the issue when you have an interview, so you want to do a little interview training here today? You don't need it. No? Yeah, okay. So the issue is kind of like this. Always be prepared and know the subject that you're going in to talk about. So if you're going to do an interview with IBM, go read their annual report. Go look them up on the internet. Know something. Don't bluff. Don't try to know something you don't know. But show a little interest. Just don't show up. Try to find out about the other side. Because believe me, they'll be asking you a lot of questions about you. So if you start talking about yourself, it's probably not a good thing. So it's just, don't talk about yourself. Right. If you get asked a question, talk about yourself. But for the most part, be outwardly focused. Do that. Remember a couple of other things. I think that people will size you up for what you know, what your attitude is, how you carry yourself, your conversation, and because your technical knowledge in an interview is generally table stakes. Now, think about it. Most of the time when I interviewed, somebody has processed these applications to make sure that they graduated college and they had all their table stakes there. So what's the difference? The difference is the social interaction that's created, the interest level, the attitude, being positive. I think it's all very important to do that. So a lot of soft stuff, but I have two children. They ask me this question a lot. So I have a couple of standard things I tell them is, don't be a pain in the ass. Right? Because if you are a pain in the ass, everybody around you will know it. Okay? You're laughing, but this is true. Don't be high maintenance. And believe me, people like me could see that in a second. In a second. Somebody comes in for an interview, you could tell in a minute if those people are high maintenance and self-centered. Now, those of you who think you can hide it, you can't hide it. It is impossible to hide it. It will come out. And if somebody's not sure, they'll keep you in the interview long enough until they figure it out. Okay? They want to see what your passion is. What do you like doing? And it's good to have things on the job, good to have things off the job. So don't be afraid to be yourself in the process of doing it. Does that help a little bit? It's not that hard. Okay.
I'll take one of the questions from the online audience which we have received. I aspire to be a technology CEO. What do I need to learn before I get there?
So they want to skip all the way to the top. They failed the interview already. There you go. Yeah. Okay, well, this is very good. So it's very simple. Okay, get an idea, something that you believe in, a product, a service, a group of people, a team, an application, whatever you think it is, and grind it. And grind it hard. And don't quit on it until you make it work. And if you can't work, go to the next idea. But the issue is, you can't just become a CEO because you think you can sort of dabble at 20,000 feet and parachute in and it works. You've got to do the work. And if you can figure out the idea that you have and really make it work and collaborate with your friends and your partners, it'll work. So I think it could be done. Now today, what's very interesting is there's more venture capital, there's more resources, so there are ways for you to take startups and make them work. And I see people in the audience who I know who have done that. So it's a good thing. By the way, it's a great goal, but you got to do the work. You got to show up every day and do the work. Right.
Somebody had a question? Yeah. Can you
Yeah.
just stand up so it can make it easier?
Hi, my name is Joanne.
Hi,
So the
Joanne.
reason why I came here with my son who's recently been accepted to PACE. And one of the reasons why we came is we were excited to see your name on the invitation that you would be speaking, and we're impressed by the generous gift to the school.
Well, thank you.
What I'd like to know, because we have decisions to make before May 1st. We have decisions to make before May 1st, is what did you get out of PACE? It's impressive that you're here today, that you came back to speak to at the university. But what did PACE give you that made you give back to help me say, Jonathan, this is a very good idea to attend school here?
That's a really wonderful question. So, Jonathan, you paying attention to this? You know, it's very interesting. Steve Friedman, the president, always asked me this question. So, I went to night school here. But I went to actually night school at City. I went to graduate school at PACE. And the thing that PACE gave me was the confidence that I could compete with everybody who went to Harvard. Because I didn't go to Harvard. I went to Lehman College. Right. And Lehman College was pretty good. But because of the teaching mechanisms, the case studies, the other students like myself who were first generation college students in our families, we ended up developing the techniques and the tools to know that when we went to the office, we could play. And I think that's what PACE does. Because the other schools, because the company, New York Telephone at the time, was willing to pay for my education, part of it, but I was always worried about going to, and I'm not, this is not a knock against any other schools, but if you go for the bigger name, you don't know if you're going to get that synergy with everybody else in the room who's just like you. And that's what was important to me. So once I decided that I thought PACE gave me the quality I needed, I was very comfortable that it gave me the confidence to compete. Now, what made me give back? It's not that hard. I mean, when you grow up in the city and you see, my wife is a teacher in the New York City school system, she was. It's not a hard thing to want to do. Also, having been lucky enough to work in a company that hires 10,000 people a year, I wanted to make sure that we not only give back to the school, but we were developing the future workforce, like you, right? So you graduate this place and you go right to work. You don't have to go to another school to learn how to do what you should have learned in college, right? So Mom, you're doing a good job, Mom. PACE. Now, if he doesn't go to PACE, you know, I'm screwed. Okay. You know, and I have friends in the phone company. I know how to find you. Joanne.
Verizon
Joanne. Is that you? Okay.
You have a follow-up comment you want to make?
Does that help you?
No, thank you, I'm fine.
Are you fine? You've done enough? Right.
Hi, speaking of names, could you tell us some of the thinking that went into the name of your company?
Ah.
How was the name Verizon chosen? And also, more recently, could you tell us something about key company's response to the superstorm Hurricane Sandy?
The response to Sandy.
Yeah, how the company handled it and any challenges that you
Not a challenge. Okay, I'm not everyday operations, so I'll just give you a couple of comments on it. But the name is easy. So when we did all these mergers, we could not find a combination that was supportable with patent protection or copyright. So we couldn't put 9X Bell Atlantic, GTE, MCI, so we couldn't do all those things. So we needed a brand new name that would have a space on the internet with its own domain name, and we did that. So we spent a lot of time on this, and it boiled down to two very simple things. So because of our heritage, Veritas, and it's like PACE, right? And because of the future, Horizon. So some genius came up with putting those two together and came up with Verizon. And what's very interesting, when we did it, The world hated it. You know, Jay Leno was killing us on television. How can you do that? It doesn't make any sense. But there was one really smart person in our advertising department that made a statement at a meeting, somebody just like you. I never forgot it. And they said, Ivan, do you realize that we send out, at the time, 65 million bills every month? And people will write you a check. Almost everybody writes a check every month, right? And they said, guaranteed in 3 or 4 months, no one will remember the old name. Okay. And what was very interesting is, we also had a strike right at the time we did it. So the newspapers had us in there every day. So it took us 60 days, and the word Verizon was branded into the public. But it was built on a concept of Veritas and Horizon.
So what year was that?
It was the year 1999. So before that we were Bell Atlantic. And before that we were something else, and before that we were AT&T. Now the Hurricane Sandy issue, so let me just address this a little differently. So one of the things that occur in our company periodically is you get these catastrophes. So we've had them all. The bombing of the World Trade Center, the fires in California, you know, the floods up in Maine, Hurricane Sandy. And so, you know, so almost every infrastructure provider like us gets belted with it. We had the hurricanes in Florida. So in each process you go through, you do some things well and you do some things that you never expected to happen. So with the bombing of the World Trade Center, we got the stock exchange up in 7 or 8 days, and nobody ever thought that could happen. With Hurricane Sandy, nobody ever thought that every basement in Lower Manhattan was going to be flooded. And so it was a difficult issue. But the company, and I had already been retired, the company made a decision to replace all the infrastructure with fiber optics. So the gap of whether or not service got restored in 30 days or 45 days was gated against a complete revamping and upgrading of the entire system. So the company made a decision that it would take a little flack for whatever time it took, but here we are now. New York City is the only city in the world with an all-fiber network in its business district. So I could sit here, and I know if the city of New York were here, they would sit and argue with me about, took you too long, you should do this, you should do that. And I would tell them to go stick it in their ear, because now they have because now they have the best communications network on the planet. So, but you learn stuff. And do you get it right all the time? No. But the issue is, you got to make a decision, you got to go with it, and you got to do what you got to do. Right?
Thank you.
That help? Yeah, right. Are you from the newspaper?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I'm a professor.
Oh, you're
My name's Neil. What advice do you have regarding building a team and making sure that all the members are just as motivated and inspired to do whatever the company's doing, be it starting the product or revamping the whole industry?
Look, the issue with that is first you've got to have a compelling idea. And everybody's got to buy into it. And then everybody's got to check their badge at the door, that they all buy into the team. And one of the things we always found, people love being part of something bigger than themselves. That's why teams win championships. That's why ballet companies do great ballet. That's why schools are great. So when you're on a team, you got to police yourself. If you have team members that are more interested in themselves than the team, you got to talk to them or her. You got to do it, and don't be afraid to do that. But I think most people, when they become part of a team and they're part of something bigger than themselves, they get excited and they get motivated and they work much harder and longer than you ever thought they would. But don't tolerate it if they're not doing it. Don't be afraid to step up to the plate and say it's not working. Okay? Got that? Are you in college now? Are you in high school? You graduating high school?
Yes.
Where are you going now?
Excuse me?
What high school are you going to?
I'm going to La Scuola d'Italia.
Oh, really?
It's
Okay, good.
American school.
That's
on the
terrific.
side.
The east side. Okay, good. Good for you. Okay. You going to stay home? Go to Pace?
Maybe first.
Maybe. Okay. There you go. Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
Hi, Hi, my name is Erica, by the way. So I'm looking at your title, Innovation and Growth in Transforming Communications Industry. And with that, do you see any innovations within the telemedicine field coming into the cellular mobile technology? Do you see them merging and creating some type of mobile telemedicine industry where we can be able to access our health records right from our cell phones? Do you see that happening?
Absolutely. Okay, so this is a wonderful question, and we could spend a whole night on this. So let me just give you a couple of little things. So one of the things that we believe is that when you have your little cell phone, we love to bring 20 megabits of capacity to this device. That's a lot. So you think about it, that's like 3 high-definition TV stations that could be on your device, or 100 analog channels. And we want to bring 100 megabits to a fixed terminal, which even today is not that much. So what do we do with this stuff? So it's not just your health record, but it's the ability to have collaborations with multiple doctors. It's the ability for multiple institutions to work together on consultations, because one of the things we're finding is data sits every place. And right now the goal, or at least everybody thinks the goal, is to create one health record. That's probably a good idea, but by the time we create one health record, you will have tests done in 10 different places. And so the issue is how to integrate all the test results in one place, not just put it on one record. So I think we're almost past the point where a single record becomes the most important thing. But what is the most important thing is the ability to access the information out of the cloud and do something with it. So let me give you a real far-reaching thought. Okay, so because you've heard about the human genome, right? So we could sequence all your genes and all your DNA and do all of that in your body, right? And so what that does is this imaging equipment can take pictures of all this microscopic stuff going on in your body, code it using light, and map it onto computer printouts. So you could become a printout, right? You're a printout. The dean, you're a printout. You're the dean. 2 deans. And we can compare these 2 printouts. It'd be a lot of fun to see that. Okay. So we can compare the printouts. But then what happens is, where does your cell phone come into? So the thing is, now we have a base record of what your body looks like. And think about it. You can go into any health center, get a blood test, and somebody can do a scan of you, transmit it with high quality over your cell phone, and now you're on your way running to getting some sort of health treatment. So I actually think when you look at the merging of biology and IT, the world's going to change. It's going to change. And I probably won't be around to see it, but there's no doubt that some of you will. And you will see the merging of these new disciplines, biology and computational science, and it will absolutely change healthcare. Okay, does that help? So be a major in computer science and engineering, because we're going to tell a biologist what to do. There you go. No.
You want to add a few words about your own personal involvement, what you're doing in that area?
I just did.
The center that you're running here in New York, the major center.
You're very kind. So one of my volunteer projects when I retired is that, you may have read about this, but New York City and New York State created what they call the New York Genome Center. You ever heard of it? Okay. So what it is all 12 of the universities and teaching hospitals and medical schools in the area, so all of them that you know of, Cornell, Mount Sinai, NYU, New York Presbyterian, all of them, Memorial Sloan Kettering, they all got together and created a joint venture. They all put some money into it, and they also raised some private money, and they created a little joint venture for 2 reasons. The first is to purchase the equipment to do genetic sequencing, which is to sequence your genes, because they could do it cheaper by doing it all together. And then the other thing they decided to do is to do collaborative projects, so that people work on some cancer disease in one hospital and the other can work together, because what's required when you merge this biology with computer science is you need big data centers to analyze the data. So think about it. Dean Merritt has 50 billion pairs of information running through her genome. And if we want to sequence it, we have to send it through these computers, ready for this? 50 times in order to get an error-free printout. So think of all the data that you're going to use up when we do this. And so where do I come in on this? So when these institutions created this joint venture, which is sort of a service company working on behalf of the 12. They needed some business people to come in and create a budget and get people to work together and all that kind of stuff. So I became one of my non-profit activities is I'm the chairman of the New York Genome Center, and it's a lot of fun. So I get to get a peek into where all the science is going, and I get to use all my communications experience to help all these institutions figure out how to build big data centers and do all this analysis. Yeah.
Does the Genome Center use interns? I'm just curious. Yeah.
Here's what I think. You ought to go to Pace and you ought to come to work for me. Okay. You know what? We're not there yet because we're just starting. But my suspicion is absolutely. Eventually that will happen. Right.
You've just
But
got
not yet.
one of the best job offers in the world. Let me tell you that.
You're doing
Let
good.
me take an online question and then I'll come back to the group here. If you were going to invest in a mobile technology, what would it be? What mobile technology that you would personally invest in?
Personally invest in? Well, I spent my whole career in Verizon. So look, I'm a believer in where we're going with 4G.
Okay.
So there's no question. And I think all the applications that ride on 4G is probably where the opportunity for growth is. That's kind of where it's at.
Right. Thank you. There's a question.
There must be something more to that question, but I don't know.
I did have a question. Yeah,
This gentleman, yeah, okay.
it was just related to Neil's question about motivation.
About?
And like as a leader, a former CEO, how do you keep yourself motivated? And like I know you said ideas are always essential, but how do you keep your ideas fresh and free-flowing?
Well, most of my employees want to get rid of me most of the time. I think that's the job of, it's a dual responsibility. You have to do a lot of reading, you have to be engaged in continuous education, you have to ask a lot of questions, you have to meet with your suppliers and your partners, so it's a lot of outreach. But you also have to have people around you that are not afraid to keep challenging the status quo and asking questions and doing that. And that's a cultural thing. You build that into the culture. So it's and certainly in an academic environment, it's easy to be stimulated by ideas. I think the difference in the commercial environment is we could take some of the ideas and we have a chance to actually operationalize them. And to me, that was always a lot of fun. Okay, I don't know if that helps, but I never had a problem staying motivated. And oh, by the way, if we weren't, between my bosses and the shareholders and the public, they would have kept us hopping if they didn't think we were doing something right,
Hello, my name is Yang Li. My specialty is in the banking field to raise funds for the firms that are actually much smaller than yours. I choose to ask a question even that you already retired. I feel like a large wireless service provider from another perspective. I feel like they already became the berry of the new technology, and there is little service differentiation, and the customer loyalty is going down in certain extent. And we all know that companies have different stages, from the early stage to mature and then death. So what's your idea of which stage Verizon is in, and what's going to happen tomorrow? Yesterday is beautiful, but what about what's in the future?
Right. This is good. You must be a lot of fun at a party, huh? So, by the way, that's a really good question, because let me answer it this way. If you believe all the literature that companies start with early stage, mid stage, end stage life cycle, where you start out with differentiation and then you end up as a commodity, you will have a very miserable life. See, I never bought into the idea that we were ever past the early stage of what we did. Because what we've learned is there's always innovation that can occur in the very thing that you always thought couldn't be changed. So that plain black telephone, people said it's a dead business. Okay, fair enough. That device went away. But now that device has been replaced with smartphones, all sorts of other component devices. So I think the issue, part of the answer to your question is, it's true that the customer will move to what they perceive to be more exciting products. But it's really up to us, the company, to constantly innovate around the core. Now, the way we look at this, we spend a lot of time innovating around our core, and then we try to integrate adjacent services so we can create further differentiation. But we've never given up on the core. It's kind of the way it is. Now, if you're an investor, you make a living trying to figure out which companies are in the beginning, middle, and end of the life cycle. And you know what's very funny about that? Most of the time you guys are wrong. And when you're right, you score big. But for the most part, you miss a lot of those things. So you could tell, I'm not in love with investors that want to put us out of business because they don't think we have differentiation. See, Verizon feels, if you look at our service versus Sprint, we think we're different. An investor will look at the two of us and say, you guys are the same. And we don't think that.
Well, what I mean is I use an app on my phone, but that app doesn't care about which internet he linked to. He just care about there is internet connection.
Okay.
And what's the internet different from yours and AT&T's? And when I'm calling my mom, if I call from here, use your service, it's going to be very expensive. But it's through internet, it's free. The communication, the base of communication is just talk.
That's all fair. So in my mind, you make that decision. You go to the other service, get your call dropped. Have to redial 3 times. And if you want to go to the internet where you think Skype is a certain, you do that. See, I'm okay with that because I think there's a certain percentage of the market that will do that. But the vast majority of the customers will pay for security and reliability. Not 2x, but they pay something for that. By the way, track record says that's right. Track record says it's right. The theory says it's not right. The track record says it's right. So okay, get your call dropped. It's okay. What?
Next question, anybody? Yeah.
Oh.
Let's take it from you.
Okay.
Obviously, my name is Jonathan, so I'm going to just say it again.
Jonathan, like you're the most famous guy here, Jonathan. Right.
Just on it was a question on the idea of expansion and providing Verizon services globally.
Right.
Recently in the Financial Times, there's an article, there's a supposed acquisition with AT&T with Vodafone. Though the facts aren't out in the open, but if that were to happen, what are your goals or Verizon's goals to do in expanding the market into Europe or other?
Yeah, I don't know much about that. Look, I've been retired. I'm not privy to what they're talking about. So, but if you go back during my time there, we bought MCI, which was a way for us to expand into 138 countries. So yeah, when the time is right, you look for opportunities to expand. And I think because you want new markets. But I think moving and buying a company that operates in Florida is just as cool as buying something that maybe operates somewhere else. But I think the untapped markets in South America, Africa, Asia are extraordinary. We've just not figured it out. But while we're trying to figure it out, you got to keep building the best and strongest company you can at home. Because you can't skip over what you need to do here in order to be strong over there. You know, that's kind of the thing we've learned in the process. That's another thing. For those of you young folks, chances are you will work somewhere else in the world other than New York. If you grew up here, you're going to work someplace else. You don't do that. My daughter lives in Canada. I don't know how that happened, but she got up and she moved to Canada. You know, so this is the way it works, and so I think that's a good thing. How many of you here came from someplace else? almost everybody. All right, so to you, that's second nature. Exactly. Right, okay. It's good. It's very good. The world needs that.
There was a question here. Good
stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, they're good.
Hi, my name is Dane Brown, and my question deals more with your earlier career before you became CEO and while you were still climbing the corporate ladder. What problems did you see at Verizon, and how did you solve them, or attempt to solve them?
What problems? Issues. You know, the way I looked at it is that, you know, I got advice once early in my career that shaped my thinking really strongly. So I tell this story a lot. So one day, my boss came into me and said, "Why don't you go home and take a break?" Just walked in, you know. And so I said, "Dave, what? I got a lot of stuff to do. Why do you want me to go home?" He says, "Well," he goes, "I don't think you're focused." He says, "You're worried about everything but what you should be worried about." And he sent me home. And he could have fired me, but he didn't fire me. He sent me home. So of course, I thought I was fired. You know, I got up it was a Friday. I got up the next morning and called him. And I said, "Dave, can we talk?" He said, "What are you bothering me on a weekend?" Boom, hung up the phone. All right? So I thought I was just toast. Okay? And then, and he was over-dramatizing a little bit. But what I realized was, I thought I was working hard, I was doing all the right things, but I didn't have my eyes 100% focused on the things I was supposed to do. I was too busy looking around, thinking about where I was going next and what I was going to do, and it came out loud and clear. And he did me a favor. He did me a big favor, because I sort of got religion, and I never looked outside my four walls after that. I always did the job I had to do, and then when I was ready for a move, luckily, the company usually anticipated when I was ready before I thought I was ready. And people give you a chance. So that's the second principle that is very important. I always tell this to everybody, that you may not know this, but somebody is always watching you. Whether it's your kids, your wife, your friends, your colleagues, somebody's always watching you. They're always watching everything you do, everything you say, and those little things you say in jest, by mistake, people don't forget them. And it takes a long time to learn that. So I think as I was going through the company, being prepared, being curious, protecting my teammates, making the people around you look good, making the company look good. If they end up taking care of you, that's a bonus. But if they don't take care of you, then you've done all the right things to get up in the morning and feel like you've done all the right things. I know it sounds like a platitude and it's overly simplified, but it's not all that far from being right. Does that help a little bit? Okay. Now, I moved a lot too, so I was flexible. So when someone said, "Well, you live in the Bronx, but we're going to transfer you to Lower Manhattan or Queens," I never complained about it. I took two buses and a train, and I went to work. When they told me I had to go out to New Jersey, well, I drove 50 miles to New Jersey. So the other thing is, when you're given a chance, you kind of take advantage of it. Yeah, I think that's what you got to do.
I have two questions. The first is, what other brands or companies in the marketplace do you admire? And the second is more of a professional question for you. If you had not gone into the communications industry, what would you have done?
I would be faculty at Pace. Or, I'm not big enough, but I would have been on the Knicks. Okay? Or the Mets. Okay. I don't know. I have no idea what I would have done. I really don't know. I'm not sure. But what other companies? So, you know, there are a lot of companies out there. Because I come from a big institutional company like ours, you know, I tend to revere those companies that have sort of made a pivot, who have been able to reinvent themselves 2 or 3 times. So I like what IBM has done. I think they've done a great job over the last 10 years, you know. I like what Procter & Gamble has done. I happen to like product-based companies that make stuff. You know, so to me, if you make stuff, it's good. Now, the obvious candidates are Apple and Google, they're doing great jobs. But they're going to be cyclical. There'll be a time when they get big enough that their differentiation will become under attack by somebody and they'll have to change something. But I think institutions that show flexibility in doing something different, I think are good that way. That help a little bit? Yeah, right. So it's not the trendy companies, but it's the ones that you know have made a change because they had to make a change. So we're going to we'll come back to you. Let's give a couple of folks.
I'm Nasser, and you mentioned earlier being a first-generation college student. Being one myself, I'm wondering, how did that experience affect your life and your career? Did you see yourself overcoming certain challenges, or is it in its own way kind of a benefit to you?
I missed the very first sentence. What was it?
You mentioned earlier being a first-generation college student.
A first-year college student.
A first-generation college student.
First generation.
In your family, yeah. So how did that affect your life? Did you see it as a challenge, as a benefit? Did it matter to you at all?
It was an honor. I mean, in our family, it was an honor to be the first. My parents couldn't go to college. My father worked with his hands, and my mom did the same. So I think the opportunity to go to City College, I mean, it was pretty cool. And in my case, I applied to Baruch City, and at the time, it was Hunter. So I was going to venture from the Bronx to Manhattan to Lower Manhattan. You know, but it was good. I mean, so I think being a first generation actually carries a big responsibility. Carries a big responsibility. So no, there's no bad news there, right? Yeah. Okay, we got the biker coming in now. Okay.
Hi. So my question is that, like, I worked in a few companies, and I find this a problem in companies that there's a lot of politics background.
Right.
And like working in companies like Amazon, I noticed that it's pretty annoying when you have people working in your team, but in the back you can, like, let's say names and stuff, and it's kind of like a rat race going on over there. And I have like some ideas of how to deal with that, but I'm sure you had to face those problems as well at some point, like with your workers, co-workers, your colleagues. How did you like manage to deal with those situations?
Yeah. So we're going to have to start over with you. Okay. You know, there's no easy answer to this, but so I'm a big movie fan. So did you see the movie Coming to America with Eddie Murphy? How many of you seen that movie? Right? You see that movie, right? So what you have to do is adopt a Prince Lumumba attitude, right? Which is operate above everybody else. Not because you're above them, but tune that out. Do your work. And if over a period of time you can't cut through the clutter, then you move on to something else, because then they're missing out on something. But I think if you get engaged in the internal cultural politics, you're making a big mistake. Look at this university. It's got its cultural things, it's got its systems, it's got its, you know, who's in charge, who's not in charge, this and that. I think it's important that if you see yourself as a change agent and an innovator, you got to find a way to raise your game and operate above the fray. Not be arrogant, but just operate above it and give it a reasonable period of time. And if it doesn't work, that's not a good fit for you. And don't let it bother you. Don't be judgmental. Because you know what? There are politics at home. There are politics everywhere you go. So when you say it occurs at the office, it occurs every place. So I think the most successful people are the ones who can ride above it and not get swallowed up by it. Okay? All right. We've got the biker guy over there. There we go. All right, there he is.
I'm not a college student yet, and I applied to PACE, and I'm really glad that I got accepted in. I'm also a first generation college student. How'd you know, like, which college was good, right for you, and how'd you know that you're not just gonna mess up and just like be a failure? Because that's like my biggest worry right now. Is just I'm gonna fall flat on my face and just be like, oh, well, time to go to McDonald's.
Okay. So that's an interesting question. The fact you're asking, it's a good thing. So to me, you get credit for being worried about it. So I think the fear of failure, not a bad motivator. So you're willing to work hard? What's the favorite thing you like to do?
Programming.
Are you good at it?
I'm alright.
Okay, very good. That's another good answer. Okay, you could be better. But you developed a skill in something?
Yeah.
Okay, so that means your work ethic is such that you can transfer that to taking 18 credits or 16 credits and doing 3 things at once instead of 1 thing at once. Look, I don't think there's any formula for knowing that, but you got to work hard, you got to keep your nose into your work, keep getting better. Every day you get better, and you won't fail. And besides, failure is, I don't know what that means. Do you think you'll learn how to ride a bike the first time you get on it? I don't think so. So don't be too hard on yourself, but it's good to be hard on yourself. Okay, it's good to have high standards and do that. But go to school and learn something, you know, and change the planet. Because Lord knows we need somebody to change this place. You know? There you go. Okay, it's good.
My name is Ilya.
Ilya, okay.
And I want to ask you, what was happened with you in your childhood maybe? What made you as a person as you now?
You know, this is another subject. So, you think Freud had something to do with this? Yeah. You know, I don't know. I don't think I'm any different than everybody I grew up with. We were a band of kids that went to public school. We were competitive with each other. We would compete with anything we did, whether it's playing stickball in the street or basketball or two-hand touch or whatever it was we did. We were always competitive. We had solid family structures so that we were accountable. And I think probably the most important thing that I feel about my own kids is their independence and their accountability. And they are independent and they are accountable. They have to be accountable for themselves and they have to be independent enough to take care of themselves. So I don't know that there's one answer to that, but I do think that over a period of time, I didn't have a safety net. You know, I don't think that I had a safety net. Being first generation, there wasn't somebody who's going to catch me if we didn't do something right. So, not that that's bad too, but so I'm not sure I have a good answer to your question, but I just think it's a journey, and you keep working it, and you gain experience as you go along. Now, look, in my case, I made a lot of mistakes along the way. I mean, Dean mentioned this, but I didn't get through school the first shot through. I don't know if you picked that up, but you know, I took a break with the help of the dean. You know, the administration said, you ought to take a break from this school. And so I went and did something else and ended up getting, I didn't join the Army. I don't know if you read that, but I got drafted. Okay, so I'm not so sure that I didn't mess up a little bit. But it is, you just get back on the bike and you work it. Okay, does that help? You got to be driven. I'm sure most of you are. I mean, you've had to move from faraway places, first generation, so you're driven. That's good. It's a good thing. And Mom's here. He's driven. I know Jonathan's driven. It's got to be. Right. Right.
Next one. How many prospective students do we have here? I want to make sure that we've answered all the questions. You want. Anybody else? You want the answer. Okay. Anybody else wants to ask a question?
Okay, you get your 15th question. Is that your 15th question? No, oh no.
This is my question. So it really relates to 2 questions regarding like office politics, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And often, you know, books that I've read, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, Who Moved My Cheese, books like that. What book would you suggest that people or employees growing through a company or even young people read in order to help improve their character, improve their professionalism? What have you read that might help them?
That's a good question. Look, my favorite business book is Good to Great. It's Good to Great. It's Jim Collins' book. I like his work. So all these sort of books about 7 steps to success or, you know, who ate my cheese, I'm okay with that stuff because somehow that's more internally focused. But I think a Good to Great book tells you how to make the institution you're part of better and why it's better. Because I actually believe this, that if you make people around you better, then you become Eddie Murphy in that movie. That's true. You know, I mean, look, I'm a sports fan, so Carmelo Anthony could score the basketball anytime he wants. But when he makes the team around him better, all of a sudden, he's great. You know, what makes LeBron now better than he was 2 years ago? Still great, but the team wins. So I think that somehow there's any book that helps you self-improve, but at the same time makes you a better team player is a book you ought to read. Good to Great does that. Okay?
I'm going to take an online question at this point. The question which has been asked is, do you think that social media is going to influence corporate governance?
Oh, absolutely. That's like, yes. No, but I think here's the way to think about it, though. So, all media is so instantaneous that any decision that whether it's a politician makes or a company makes hits the Ethernet so fast, and there's instant feedback. So social media becomes a really important part of making sure you're in tune with the public and the markets and things of that nature. So yeah, there's no question about it.
Another question from an online audience here is, if you could become a CEO of a major company in another industry, what industry would you choose?
I've never been asked that question. Yeah.
The first oracle one?
Yeah. I've never thought about it. I guess if you're going to love this, the guy in the back's going to love this. If I had to do it again, I wouldn't work in a corporation. Okay? I'd probably build my own business. But I didn't know I could do that when I started. I thought I needed to work in a setting in which I had teammates. And now that I've gone through the track, I probably could have done something on my own. So maybe I would have tried that. But I don't think I would answer the question by saying I'm going to repeat the same career path. I think my instinct is I would have tried something different. Whatever that is, I'm not sure.
And in a sense, you've achieved it by becoming co-chair of this new enterprise that you're leading.
Well, I mean, that's a way to think about it. So in retirement, I have not tried to continue to do what I always did. So I'm trying to do something different and figure out if I can do it. And you'll figure that out over time. So yeah, I think constantly reinventing yourself is a good idea. So if I had a reincarnation, I'd come back as something else. I don't know. Right.
Any other questions from a prospective student or a parent of a prospective student here? Any questions from a current student? Yeah, okay, go ahead.
So New York City is been promoting a lot about like local startups in New York and trying to be the next tech city. But I feel like New York has been the tech city, but where do you see us compared to something like San Fran in terms of Silicon Valley versus Silicon Alley?
Yeah. So that's really good. So this is the conversation we always have with the city. So if you look at the last couple of mayors, they've done a pretty good job at trying to make the city more friendly to startups. So we have lots of reusable commercial space in Brooklyn. Long Island City they're reinventing. They've done a good job with Soho and North Soho and things of that nature. So but here's the thing that we need. We need more corporations to be headquartered here, rather than have corporations to have satellites here. So the difference in Silicon Valley is you've got companies who have the majority of their people who are located in those locations. Same thing with North Carolina. So I think we're doing well here, but with the 2007 and 8 meltdown of the financial services industry, we have to build the biotechs, we have to build small manufacturing, we have to build the retail companies. So it's going to take a little bit more time to make us attractive. And the biotechs are starting to move back into New York. So I think we have more work to do on that. But so what's going to make that happen? Two things, taxes and schools. Because if you want to attract people into New York, you have to be somewhat tax friendly. Can't give it away, but you got to be somewhat tax friendly. And you have to have a sufficient level of proficiency in your public schools so people who move in feel that they're comfortable sending their people to school. And those are two things that obviously we've been talking about with the city for a while. Right.
And then another question is, if you had to choose between two different majors, would it be computer science or information system?
Well, that's interesting too. Okay, you should ask these two people here, but here's what I think. I think the boundaries of those two things have changed over time. So I'm not sure that answer works like it used to. But I do think that having a base in computer science, okay, is a good thing, because it's sort of like the old engineering of it. But I think having a familiarity with the ability to deal with applications and processes and changes is also a good thing. So I don't know, how would you guys answer that? Help me with this. Did I get this
I
right?
think that's a good answer.
It is a good answer? Okay. Okay. But we hire, the thing is, you know, it's interesting. We hire engineers, like electrical engineers and things like that, but we hire a lot more IT people. And what's interesting is their degrees are not in one thing. They're sort of across a lot of different disciplines within the IT field. So it's really good. It's good that you think about that.
Well, I actually was here 10 years ago as an IS major, but I came back as a CS major and as grad school.
They're both good.
Yeah, so I just want to know, like, if I had to go back and change, I would just have to double major.
Yeah. But you can't redo it, can you?
I can't redo it.
Right, exactly. So what are you worried about? Okay.
Well, I figure there's a lot of new prospects. and it's
Okay,
just something to think
very good.
about.
Okay, good. There you go. Yeah.
Any questions from our external visitors and guests today?
What about advice? You have any advice? You want to give me advice? What the heck, right? You're going to give me advice, right? Right. No advice. I'll take it. Doesn't mean I'll do it, but I'll take it. Okay.
Any
Okay.
input, suggestions, comments from our staff members? They worked very hard to put this thing together for the evening, so I wanted to give them a chance to ask questions also. Anybody from the staff?
Just hope you'll note, Mr. Seidenberg, the number of Seidenberg scholars, some of whom have actually completed their degrees here at Pace and come back and give back and are really involved, who come to hear you talk.
And I see a few of them out there. I
So
see that. and I think-
they need a little disciplining if you have a few moments after the talk.
I don't think they need to. By the way, let me just say this. You know, as you might expect, over my career, I've had a chance to go to Wharton and Yale and all these places and do that. You were great. Your questions and your interests and your focus, you were great. Keep doing it. Just keep working at it, and you will find that even the faculty was great today. You know, you guys were great. Okay, but that's very good. You see, I can say that to the faculty. What are they going to do to me? Nothing. Okay, but you guys you're all good. I love your focus. Keep up the good work, and keep making yourselves better and make the school you go to better. Okay, very good. Thank you.